Hello. We are going to be chatting about how to declutter sentimental items so that you can have that peace of mind. Because those sentimental items can just honestly pile up and just kind of like consume our entire house. So, we're going to talk about the most effective ways that you can declutter those items and some like tips and tricks that I have to do it as well. So, hello, welcome. I'm Jessica. I'm the Organized Mama. I help families get organized with real practical tips, tricks, and tutorials. So you're going to find a lot of, practical things going on this channel because I truly believe that everyone can get organized. It just might look different to you. So, we're going to start by just talking about like what sentimental items are. Sentimental items for this chat and most things, but like for this chat are all the things that are meaningful to either you or they're meaningful to someone else that you are holding on to. Let me give you an example of that. Something that is meaningful for you, or something that's meaningful for you, could be like your baby blanket, maybe something special from your childhood, something from growing up, maybe like your wedding dress, something along those lines. Those are sentimental items to you. Sentimental items that you might be holding on to for somebody else are things that other people view as important, but you don't. So we have a rocking horse that was my husband's father's. It is up in our attic right now because my husband's father believes that that is sentimental, so we are holding on to it. Now, those are the type of items that we can declutter, and so I'm going to walk you through how you can go about doing that. But those items that are meaningful to somebody else and not really you are things that you can declutter because if they have no emotional connection to you, then you don't need to house them in your house. Sometimes, they can come in handy because they were, you can use them for furniture, you can repurpose them, maybe use them as decor pieces. But if it's not something that's meaningful to you, then those are things that we can start to declutter. So we're going to talk about how to do that because, again, that's other people's things. And so I never recommend decluttering other people's things. You can remove it from your house if it doesn't belong in your house to anyone in your family, but you don't need to get rid of other people's things unless you kind of like set those parameters. So we're going to get started with like how to do that. So I have a workbook. It's called Workbook to Decluttering Sentimental Items. I'm going to kind of be like walking through this because this is the workbook I use when I work with virtual clients and back when I was doing in-home organizing. This was the exact process that I did whenever we would touch pretty much all storage spaces. So I'm just going to kind of be like walking us through this and how, to kind of like declutter our things. So when we start, okay, well, let me get to my questions because we have some questions in here. There we go. Okay, so when we start decluttering our sentimental items, I suggest, going to the area where all of those items are. If you have them in other places and like you want to like really, if you aren't sure if you're using them, like maybe it's a piece of furniture that's like sitting in your living room, but like doesn't really need to be sitting in your living room, then I would suggest like moving it where you are decluttering all the other things, because just the visualization, the seeing of everything in one location is going to help you just kind of like streamline what you have. If you are actually using that item and it's working and it's perfect and you love it, then you don't have to see it with all the other stuff, but just take note that that item, is going to be there, like that you have it. So as you do go through your other items, that it will be easier for you to kind of like remember that you have an item like that you love. Because again, when you see everything in front of you, it's just going to make things easier to declutter, let go, and also keep, because you're going to see everything. So get everything all together. And then when all the things are all together, then you can start going through. And so typically I recommend max 3 hours at a time. Sentimental items do take a toll on you. So don't try and like go through all the things all at once. It does take a while. This isn't like, oh, just get it done in an afternoon. This is something that you should be doing, over the course of a couple weeks, months, depending on how much stuff you have. I once had an in-home client who her family had so many heirlooms and they took up like about half of their basement. So we had to kind of like go through those, figure out what she wanted to keep, what she didn't. Most of the pieces weren't the style of her husband, her house, and she had no family to give it to. So we had to get like really creative with how we were going to, use or declutter those items. And so when I say declutter, a lot of people think like, oh, you're being like so like not sentimental. It's the only word I could think of. But I'm going to say and like argue with you that it's actually the opposite. When I only hold on to items that truly mean something to me, I'm actually being far more sentimental than just holding on to everything just because. If you hold on to everything just because, then nothing's important. But if you only hold on to those special, important things, then those are actually the things that are special. That's why I like really recommend decluttering as much as you possibly can, so that it makes it easier for you to really showcase and appreciate your special items. So all of your items are together and we're going to start decluttering. So I have some decluttering questions that are in my workbook. It is listed below where you're watching this video. So one of the biggest questions that I always start with is, do you have to hold on to this item to truly appreciate it? The reason why is sometimes you don't need the physical item in order to appreciate it. Sometimes you can get away or appreciate it more if it's in a book instead of, actually having the tangible item. Now, some really great ways to do that, making a scrapbook of all of your childhood ornaments. This way you don't have to put them up on the tree. I've had a lot of in-home clients have special cherished ornaments that they love, but have broken, something's been missing, things are, coming off of it. And so one client, this is where I got the idea. One client decided to take pictures of all of her childhood ornaments. She was a photographer. And so she staged all the pictures. They looked beautiful. And then next to each picture, she had like a story about like how she got it, who she got it from. Maybe like somebody wrote her something like about that ornament. It was just a beautiful book. She spent quite a bit of money to create this beautiful like coffee table book of all of her favorite ornaments. But it's something that she took out every Christmas instead of hanging on to ornaments that were broken or, just were losing their color, or she was like nervous that they'd break. So then she just wasn't using them at all. And it was just a beautiful thing to kind of add to her holiday tradition. So every few years they would put together new ornaments to put in a new book for the family. And I thought that was like a great way to really cherish items without physically holding on to them. You could also do this with china, grandparents' china, maybe like, serving platters or other things that might not be your style. You don't need to hold on to them, but you can still collect the stories behind them by creating a scrapbook, by creating a memory book. All those things could be far more meaningful than holding on to the actual piece of china that you're never going to use and that's going to sit in your basement and just take up space. So these are some creative ways in which you can kind of like decipher which one should be which. Was this item gifted to me? And if so, why am I not using it? That is one of my favorite questions to ask as well when somebody's like, well, this was a gift from, my mother-in-law. So why aren't you using it? Well, it's not my style. So why are you keeping it? Well, because it was from my mother-in-law. So we need to start removing the attachment of the gift itself to actually, you like that the act of the gift giving versus the physical gift itself. If your mother-in-law gave you a gift that is amazing, that is so generous, so sweet, be appreciative for the act of gift giving, but you don't always need to physically hold on to the gift. It's okay if you part with the gift. If you aren't going to use it, then all you're going to do is keep that, and then you could end up with resentment towards your mother-in-law. So what is the point of that? Let's just remove that from the conversation. In the workbook, I have a ton of other questions as well that help guide you through decluttering your sentimental items. So use these questions, and as you do that, you're going to make 4 piles of your sentimental items. I know, 4 piles. Yes, you're going to make one that's keep, one that's donate, one that's sell, and one that's maybe. The maybe pile are for those things that you just aren't totally sure what to do. Now, there is a methodology called the touch it once method. I hate that method. I don't like it. I think it is an awful method to use, especially on sentimental items. And here's why. Not everything is going to be a one and done type of deal. Sometimes you need to hold on to something a few times. Sometimes you need to see the collective whole of all of your sentimental items before you can make a decision on if something is worthy of keeping or not. So instead of just being like, hold it once and decide from there, I say make a maybe pile for your first round. You're going to go through and do a second round of decluttering. And that second round, there is no maybe pile. Use the maybe pile just to kind of like get yourself going, because as you get going, you might quickly realize, I don't need this that's in the maybe pile, or I really need this that's in the maybe pile, as you kind of go through more and more sentimental items. So don't touch it once. I don't believe in that. I don't think that's a great methodology for sentimental items. Make 4 piles. So ask yourself the decluttering questions. And as you're going through, then create those 4 piles of your stuff. And as you go through, just keep going through all of those items, asking the questions, putting them in one of the 4 piles. Once you've completed either all of the stuff or 3 hours, remove the donate items and remove the sell items. Now, we talked about selling earlier and how to do that and how to make sure that you set it on a deadline so that you aren't holding on to things longer than you should. And so once you've removed those things, then all you're left with is the keep and the maybe pile. And so those you can put back in with your storage items, just kind of like separate them from the rest. Continue to do that process until you've gone through everything that is sentimental. Once that's done, once all the sentimental items have been decided into one of the 4 categories, you are going to take the keep and the maybe pile, and you're going to go through and you're going to do the same thing again. Keep, donate, sell. That's it. There is no maybe. So the second time, you need to be more decisive. But because you're going through a second time, you are going to be able to be more decisive because you've already seen it. You've already touched it. You've already experienced that memory that that item holds. So you're going to be clear on keeping, donating, or selling. And then, once you kind of like get through that, then you will definitely know what items you're keeping. You're definitely going to know what items you're donating, and definitely know what items you're selling. It is a long process, but it is an easy process. Like the system itself is easy. The process of it is hard. That's what I'm trying to say. Because there's so much sentiment and so many memories and so many emotions that go behind those items. You really want to think about, keeping the stuff that makes you feel good, keeping the stuff that you love and appreciate over just keeping all the things. Keeping the things because somebody else said they were important. Keeping the things because you feel obligated to hold on to them. Remove that from the equation and just keep the things that mean something to you. Now, some quick tips on all of that. I would recommend keeping a donation tracker, which in my workbook I actually have a donation tracker in the workbook. I also have a selling tracker. So you also have a date like sell by on the selling tracker. And the reason why is if you hold on to something for longer than like a month, 2 months, maybe like a holiday season, then it's just going to return back to your storage area as clutter. So set the deadline. And if that deadline hits and you still haven't sold it, then come up with plan B. What is plan B? How are you going to sell it? Are you going to do like resale? Are you going to pay somebody else to sell it for you? Or are you going to donate it? Come up with a plan if it doesn't sell by that date, which is why I love the selling tracker, so that you can, ensure that, the item you have, where you're selling it, the description, how much you're charging, and your sell by date, so that you're like dead set on when that item is going to be out of your house. So there is no question about extra clutter. There is no question about like holding on to things that just don't need to be there. Now, this is not easy, but that's why I say 3 hours max at a time. Most people usually start with about, they go in thinking like, I can do 3 hours. And after about like hour and a half, 2 hours, that's kind of like been most of my in-home clients' cutoffs. It is emotional. So just know that there is an emotional component to this. So doing a brain dump where you just kind of like write down everything, getting yourself emotionally prepared to tackle those items. In my Sentimental workbook, I got you covered with that because I know how challenging that can be. So we walk through some mental clutter clearing exercises before you even start decluttering your sentimental items, so you're in the right headspace. That's the other thing. Using upbeat music can also help as well if you are decluttering stuff from other people, and it could get kind of challenging. If something belongs to a spouse or significant other, maybe somebody else that is living in the house, and you are just kind of like questioning if it's worth keeping or not, put that in the maybe pile. And then when you go back through it all, because now you don't have as much stuff to look at, then have spouse, significant other, family that's living in the house go through the stuff with you. Once you do like a big sweep through, then those questionable items, it's not going to be as much as overwhelming for everybody to go through and see, which is going to just help everybody move through the process easier, quicker, and not be so overwhelmed. Now, I did have one more tip for you. And okay, so I made a whole video on how to donate and sell that I'm going to link below, that I want you to watch as well, to make sure that you understand how you're going to donate, how you're going to sell, and how you're going to get rid of those things. I also have a playlist for you on decluttering sentimental items that mean something to somebody else, along with creating memory boxes and how to declutter your own sentimental items with even more tips than what I'm sharing right now. So make sure you watch that. That's down below where you're watching this video, and grab the Sentimental workbook for decluttering. The workbook for decluttering sentimental items, because it will walk you through this entire process with tips, tricks, questions, trackers, checklists, all sorts of stuff to keep you on track as you go through sentimental items, because those things are not easy to go through. They do take effort. They do take emotion. So I want you to go through all of those things as well. And I also have free guided decluttering questions that anyone can get. Just hop on the link to pick those up as well. You can get those, and some of the questions might, a few of them are the same, but most of those questions are just general for every area of your house. The decluttering questions that are in the workbook are specific for sentimental items. They're the specific questions that I use when working with virtual clients going through sentimental items. So I highly recommend getting the decluttering questions to use for everywhere. It will help you immensely declutter your stuff. So I will see you all soon. Thank you so much for watching.